Hi, I'm Tally. I'm a personal development nerd and I write about topics like self-esteem, relationships, career, and personal growth. I help people find a little bit more day-to-day fulfillment in their lives by sharing advice that's practical, simple, and relatable. Now, if you have a hard time making decisions, or if you find yourself being really indecisive, if decisions stress you out, you feel like you're always overwhelmed or stuck in analysis paralysis, here I'm going to be sharing 5 ways that you can become more decisive and take back some of that time and energy that you feel like you're losing to all of this decision making that is just so stressful. But before we jump into that, let's talk about where indecisiveness actually comes from. I recently read this book called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. That was really helpful in understanding actually why we get so paralyzed by all these decisions. He kind of categorizes 2 different types of decision makers in this book: maximizers and satisficers. A maximizer tries to get the maximum returns on their decision. So they're trying to get the absolute best option out there, and they won't settle until they know they've exhausted all the options and they've chosen the absolute best decision to make. A satisficer also makes decisions. They don't just throw caution to the wind and pick at random, but once they find something that they're satisfied with, something that is good enough, they choose that, they move on, and they don't worry about all the different possible options out there because they're not trying to get the absolute best in something. They're just trying to find something that fits their requirements, is good enough, and then they can move on with their life. If you're a perfectionist, you're probably going to look for the best possible choice out there, and because there are so many endless options out there, you're not going to be able to settle until you know that you've picked the absolute best one. If you think that there's a perfect option out there to satisfy to get 100% on all possible requirements and all possible criteria, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're chasing perfection. Maximizers, people who are super indecisive, also put too much weight on all their decisions. They have a hard time distinguishing between what's an important decision and really needs their time and energy, and what's a decision that is not that important and can just be like, flip a coin, it doesn't really matter that much. So everything becomes important to them, and that's where all the overwhelm comes from. Okay, so we know there's maximizers and we know there's satisficers, and different people fall into different categories depending on the types of decisions there are. But generally, if you find yourself feeling really indecisive, getting stuck in analysis paralysis, feeling overwhelmed, you probably identify more with the maximizer and would like to learn how do those satisficers even do it? How do they just pick something and once it's good enough, they just move on and don't worry about all the other options, and don't, more importantly, don't regret their choices or constantly second guess themselves or flip back and forth all the time. Well, here's 5 ways that you can become more decisive. Number 1, figure out what's actually important to you. What are your values? How do you like to spend your time? And on a more specific level, what are the most important things in the decision that you're making? So let's, on the broader scale, figuring out what matters to you, you have to decide which decisions are important to you and which ones aren't. Which ones are worth a little bit of extra time and energy to compare, to make your mind up on, and which ones are just, a blip on the radar. Your life's not going to change significantly either way. For me, I am wearing my black shirt today because I don't care about clothes very much. I like to get dressed up on occasion, but for the most part, I really relate to Steve Jobs and Einstein's thing of just wearing the same black shirt every day and not having to make that decision. If that could be my life, that'd be great. I'm not quite at that level, but I resonate with that. So for me, clothing is not something I value highly, so I should not be spending a lot of time and energy making decisions about clothing. My friend is a fashion designer. She went to school for fashion. She has her own fashion line. She loves clothing. She will shop for other people. She loves clothing so much. If she spends 5 hours on a weekend shopping, then that's a Sunday afternoon well spent. If I spend 5 hours on a weekend shopping, making decisions, flipping back and forth, like being indecisive, that feels like I might as well just have spent the day washing windows in my house. Like, that's just absolutely draining. So knowing that, if there's decisions about clothes, when I open up my Amazon app or go to the store, I need to make sure I'm not getting sucked in to comparing a bunch of different, t-shirts or sweaters back and forth to each other's, because it doesn't matter that much to me. It matters to my friend, but to me, I know if I'm going to be going into the situation where I need to make these decisions, then I need to remember that this is not something that's super important for me. It's not something that matters that much, and like have that perspective and like keep myself from rabbit holing into something that doesn't really matter to me. And then on a more specific scale, if you're making a decision, what are the criteria and requirements that are the most important for you? You need to distinguish that between that and what's just nice to have. So if you're deciding what college to go to, there's a million different ways that you can choose what college to go to. You need to figure out what are your top 3 most important things. Narrow down your option using those 3 criteria. Don't consider options that are, have a bunch of nice to haves but don't fit all 3 of your criteria. Then once you've narrowed down your options to only the things that meet your essential 3 requirements or criteria, then you can kind of pick and choose, like, okay, which ones of these have more nice to have options. That way you're not just blindly comparing everything by all possible measures and criteria. You're being specific about what's important to you. You're filtering, and then you have a narrow set of options, and you're more intentional about how you're approaching the decision making. Second way to be more decisive, learn to trust your gut. Usually, in most cases I've found when I'm being indecisive, there's one option that I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards, like gravitating towards. If something is calling to you just a little more than the other things, go with that thing. If I have a choice between 3 different Netflix shows that I want to watch, and one is kind of calling to me a little bit more, it just kind of piques my interest a little bit more, thinking about it longer isn't going to change my mind about what my actual preference is. Like, I'm not going to convince my gut to like have a different preference with my brain by trying to use logic. So if you're going to be spinning your wheels just to like basically split hairs, go with the thing that you feel like you're gravitating towards anyway, and just move on and save your time and energy onto something else. Easy way to do this is to flip a coin. So let's say you're trying to decide whether you want Italian food or Mexican tonight. If you heads is Italian, tails is Mexican. If you flip heads, it's Italian, and you go, oh yay, then okay, choose that one because you were clearly excited. If you flip heads and you go, oh, Italian, oh man, kind of like, if you feel kind of bummed about it, then you probably were wanting Mexican a little bit more. So choose Mexican. And then if you flip a coin and you're kind of indifferent, then it's clear that the options are basically the same in your head, and just pick one. It's splitting hairs at this point. Save your time and energy on actually enjoying the Italian or Mexican food that you choose. Number 3, time box your decisions. There is a point of diminishing returns when it comes to analyzing, comparing, researching all your different options and making decisions, right? You feel like, okay, but if you give yourself too much time, if you don't tell yourself, okay, I have to make a decision by then you're just gonna ruminate on it until you kind of decide that, okay, I have to make a decision. So if you have to make a decision, give yourself, if it's a bigger decision, give yourself a date. If it's a smaller decision, give yourself like a set amount of time to make that decision. And then once you hit that time, you choose something and you go with it. It doesn't matter. There's no more overthinking about it. You bias towards action, you pick the thing, and then you move on. I used to get really super indecisive about picking a restaurant to eat at, just like for date night or for getting food with my friends. There were times that it would be Friday evening and I'd be talking to my friend about, oh, let's go make dinner plans, and I'd sit around for an hour comparing different restaurants on Yelp and different menus and looking at pictures and all these things, and I would get so paralyzed by all the different options that I would just like end up crying or something about like just feeling like I wasted my Friday evening making choices instead of actually enjoying it with my friends eating food. So instead of just giving yourself an unlimited amount of time to make a decision, time box it. So next time when I need to go choose a place to eat, instead of giving myself an unlimited amount of time to ruminate and stress about it, I set a timer for 20 minutes, look around, look at the things I've bookmarked, poke around a couple places, and then when that timer goes off, I choose the first thing that my gut goes with, and then I move on, because that decision isn't going to make or break my life. And that leads to the fourth point, which is you have to realize that your decisions aren't going to make you happy. You can sit around and make all the perfect choices in the world, but just because you've made a bunch of ideal decisions, that's not what's actually going to bring you happiness. Your happiness with a decision doesn't come from your choice being the most perfect one in the world. Your happiness with a decision comes from your ability to say, okay, I've made this choice. It's not going to own me either way. I'm going to live with it, and I'm going to be satisfied whether or not this turns out well. If every choice you make comes with all this pressure of it has to be the perfect choice and your happiness is weighing on it, you're constantly going to be looking for validation that you make the right choice, that you've made the right choice, and you're always going to be looking over your shoulder, wondering if somebody else has made a better choice out there and if you could have something better. And that's just assuming that the grass is greener on the other side, instead of being happy with your own grass. That's no way to live. So realize that it's not the choices that are going to make you happy. It's your attitude. It's your ability to own the choices, get your time and energy back, and not put so much weight, not put so much of your happiness on external things like whether or not, like what college you're going to go to or what job you're going to go with. Either way, there's going to be repercussions of all the decisions that you make. You just have to own it and not let it own you so much. Then the fifth way to be more decisive is don't second guess your decisions. Look, if you have to teach yourself that you're going to be okay no matter what you choose, no matter if a decision is going to end up poorly for you or if somebody's going to end up making a better choice than you, you're going to be okay. So starting today, when you make a choice, own it. Don't go comparing it to the other choices that people make. Once you've made a decision, just stick with it. Don't try to go back or think about, well, what if I had chosen this, or what if I had made this other decision? Because that's not actually going to affect reality at all. You're just ruminating in your head, and you're taking yourself out of the present by thinking about, well, what about these other million options? If you let yourself think about all those million other options, you're not going to be productive. You're just going to be overwhelmed. If after every decision you make, you're going, oh man, I could have made a better decision. Oh, look, Susie over there made that choice and she looks happier. Or, I wonder if I should have done this. Then you're teaching your brain that decisions are these crazy important things that we should be really afraid of. And you're putting more pressure on future you to freak out about these decisions. So just chillax, man. Learn to live with your decisions and just own it. It doesn't affect your happiness. It's just a decision you made. You'll make better decisions in the future. It's not a huge deal. It's your attitude that matters, not really the decision at the end of the day. All right, now I want to know, what kind of decisions do you struggle with the most? And which of these tips do you think you can start implementing today to start making decision making a little easier and a little less stressful? And if you want to go in more in depth, I actually did write an article about this that's about 13-minute read over on my website. I'll link the full article in the description of this video. Check that out if you want to go a little bit more in depth and see some more examples. Hit subscribe if you want more content like this about personal development, self-esteem, personal growth, relationships, career, etc., etc. Now go on those decisions and get your time and energy back. You got this.